Hello and welcome again to the Rider Review. This is Eric Red Rider, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2019 superhero action film titled Shazam. Now, Shazam, of course, actually has a lot of deep-going roots. It is a part of the DC comic universe. The same people that gave you Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, The Flash, and Green Lantern, and so forth. Well, of course, one time Shazam was originally named Captain Marvel before Marvel actually started to use the name. And at one time, it was neither, Marvel didn't come into fruition until 1961. So, but Shazam was neither part of the Marvel universe or the DC universe. In fact, it was kind of from another branch completely outside of the realms of DC or Marvel. In fact, it was from some other brand I don't know. I don't think it exists anymore. But anyhow, at one time, the Captain Marvel character, which would eventually become Shazam, well, they were pretty much almost in close competition with Superman. In fact, it also became a comic book that almost was like upstaging Superman in many ways, shape, or form. Now, of course, you all know Superman is virtually untouchable, even back in the 30s and 40s. So unfortunately, DC started, issuing lawsuits, because of copyright infringement based off of the Superman character, and that all the traits that Captain Marvel / Shazam had were pretty much all maybe inspired by the Superman character, but nonetheless, it was still pretty much copyrighted. All of Shazam's traits were, almost at a similar level to Superman's. But because of that, they almost became like written off. But fortunately, then when Marvel started to come around in the early 60s, they decided to take the name Captain Marvel, and DC, which eventually brought the rights to the original Captain Marvel, decided that since we can't have two Captain Marvels for the fear of retribution, they changed the name from Captain Marvel to Shazam, and Shazam has become a part of the DC universe ever since. I know this seems very confusing, but hey, even back in the 30s and 40s, the comic book industry was just as cutthroat as it is today. Okay, the runtime of this movie is 2 hours and 12 minutes long. It is directed by David F. Sandberg. It is produced by Peter Safran. The script was written by Henry Gayden. The story was written by Henry Gayden and Darren Lemke. It was composed by Benjamin Wallfish. The cinematography by Maxime Alexandre. And it was edited by Michel Allais. And the cast stars Zachary Levi. We have Asher Angel. We have once again Mark Strong, once again playing another DC comic villain. Back in 2011, he played the villain Sinestro, which was, of course, the leading villain character in Green Lantern. Well, Mark Strong is back again, playing another DC villain in the Shazam franchise as Dr. Sivana. Let's see, we also have Jack Dylan Glazer, Adam Brody, Djimon Hounsou, Faithe Herman, Megan Good, Grace Fulton, Michelle Borth, Ian Chen, Ross Butler, Jovan Armand, DJ Cotrona, Marta, Milans, and Cooper Andrews. There is definitely no question that Shazam has a plethora of good things going for it. I really got to admit, I enjoyed this movie tremendously. One of the things about it that I like this movie that stands out is that this is not, a superhero where the superheroes are almost practically playing anti heroes. Sure, we're not necessarily seeing a cookie cutter good guy, heroic vigilante, or anything campy or anything like that, even though it's played to a much more lighter capacity than compared to the more darker, brooding stuff that we have been seeing in both the DC universe and the Marvel universe, where it seems that our vigilantes are usually just doing these things out of obligation instead of pleasure. And I think this is what stands out from the other movies is that the Shazam movie, this one here, it doesn't take itself too seriously, but also at the same time, it makes the elements to this movie very light. Yeah, there are a few dark and there might be some dramatic, tender moments here in this movie, especially when Shazam's alter ego, what's his name, Billy Batson, goes out searching for his mother after his mother abandoned him from a carnival, and all that he has kept from his mother's memory is a compass that which she won at a carnival, and then she eventually just abandoned him. And it was also for one of the most lamest, most pathetic excuses going, simply because she just couldn't afford to watch over him because number one, she was 17, and number two, her his father, his baby daddy, was a no-show. Which I think is not a good excuse, okay? It's a fucking cop-out.
What's the language?
Okay, I mean, one of the things too also about this movie is that it succeeds in staying original, and not only that, it plays off a lighter theme as opposed to the more dark and gritty material you see in superhero movies where everything is political, philosophical, or educational, making it more laboring to watch than fun. You know, I get kind of a little bit sick and tired of run-down superheroes who don't want to do this but have to do it, like it's an obligation, like they're practically like choiceless, or that, like I said, the movie is not resting on the realms of being political or philosophical or woke. No, this was a movie that was fun to watch. We just want to watch our superheroes go out and kick some supervillains' butt. We don't want to waste our times to be inspired. We don't want to waste our times being indoctrinated by being forced to believe what they believe is right. And if you're not, you're an asshole. No. This movie was not meant to be taken seriously. It was supposed to be an enjoyable roller coaster ride of a film. And there's also some great amounts of humor in this superhero film. And that's what I like. It seems like Shazam is following the footsteps of Marvel superhero films, leaning towards humor, sort of in the same similar vein like Deadpool and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, albeit a little less satirical in its delivery. Yes, I mean, you could still have some light humor in a superhero movie without it, falling into satire or self-parody or lampooning. This movie does feel like a superhero movie, but it could probably be lean towards a much more younger audience because the main vigilante characters are actually kids as opposed to adults. Well, actually kids, but when they go through the metamorphosis in their superhero forms, they do materialize as adults. But when they're not superheroes, they're pretty much back to being kids again. We get to see a bit of an origin story of how Billy Batson became Shazam and how Savannah became the supervillain. At least we get to see a bit of an origin story from both the hero's perspective and the villains. I already told you a little bit about the superhero's perspectives. After his mother's abandonment, he was, thrown from foster care to foster care, and that Billy Batson didn't always play by the rules. He used to steal, he used to shoplift, and he used to get himself into, petty delinquent mischief while getting maybe just reprimands. But then he goes into some kind of a deep portal. The wizard, whose name is Shazam, well, obviously he is ready to give up his powers, but he wants to give it to somebody who is of pure heart. Apparently, Billy Batson seems to be the rightful candidate for some strange reason. And voila, he has now become Shazam. And then we come to the villain side of the story, where Dr. Savannah, played by Mark Strong, before he was played by Mark Strong, he was he was raised in a pretty dysfunctional family with an abusive father and an equally abusive, obnoxious jerk of a brother. He gets sucked into this portal. This was before Batson became Shazam, because Mark Strong's character is like much older than Billy Batson. Anyhow, he took the test too, but unfortunately he failed the test. But then he wasn't going to give up on the test, and eventually he had something like some kind of an eye that he put into himself, that he implanted into himself. And within the eye, he actually has the power and the control of the 7 deadly sins. But unfortunately, only 6 sins managed to materialize. Alright, you want to know which one was the 7th one that did not materialize? Spoiler alert, it was envy. Which I will explain a little bit more later. I already told you off, who it was. Alright, so the simplified theme leads you to the question of what would happen if a 14-year-old kid was suddenly given superpowers, not knowing what to do with them. The closest movie of that theme goes to 2010's Kick-Ass, albeit no powers to go with the costume, but a strong fan following on social media. With the exception of our hero, who walks into a strip bar and facing off against demonic-looking gargoyles who represent the 7 deadly sins, Shazam is for the most part light and more aimed towards the younger age demographics, even with a simple message relating to the importance of loving one's family and showing love to the people around you. I mean, we get that too, especially this important scene where Batson, outside of his Shazam alter ego, comes over to the address where his mother actually lived. and simply wanted an explanation as to why she abandoned him. And then he said something along the lines like, it may be nice to come to the parent that I once knew, but I'm pretty much more happy to go back to the parents who once loved me. So it's like, nice seeing you, though you will not see me no more. And walks away. That's pretty much maybe the most sensitive parts in this movie, but you know, it appears as though as if the foster family that he was staying was actually much more loving, caring, and nurturing than his own mother. At least they never abandoned him like his own mother did. And for the most lamest excuse, I'm sorry. Yes, I know teen pregnancy sucks. Where you don't have your freedom and you don't have your liberties anymore, and that you have to go through a lot of sacrifices. But at the same time, what you did was selfish and it was a cop out. Totally unaccepted. Although it might be following the footsteps of comedy superhero like films like Deadpool, the movie seems to be more inspired on the surface of the light comedy children's film Big from 1988, starring a very young Tom Hanks. About a young kid who seems to take the manifestations of an older adult. I mean, hell, when he's in his Shazam alter ego, he decides to try some of the best beers. So he walks into a convenience store and starts buying beer, and he drinks it and he just seems like he doesn't like the taste. Can't blame him. Even as a 44-year-old, I never really ever understood why adults seem to enjoy the taste of a beer. I tried it. I hated it. It's disgusting. And why do I want to drink something that's going to make me sick? And why do I need to suffer from cirrhosis of the liver?
Cirrhosis? I mean, cirrhosis.
Whatever. Just like this movie and in Big, we see a kid making the transformation of an adolescent boy into a fully grown adult. Yeah, you get to wear big boy pants now, even though you're still conventionally small. It's a great combination to take the idea of a kid growing up fast comedy by adding superhero powers to its original, and it works on all sorts of levels. For the action to really start picking up, you need a great deal of patience, as you'll have to sit there and watch the tedious origin story of a troubled childhood of young Billy Batson, played by Asher Angel, and the origin story of Dr. Thaddeus Savannah, played by Mark Strong. Is it just me, or does every movie that needs to have a villain, they'll say, hey, if Nicolas Cage isn't around, let's just get Mark Strong to play the villain? And how he turned evil. And that's great because it just opens up rooms for character development on both the protagonist and the antagonist. And that I always go for. It's always great to have an opportunity to open up for, solid character development. And you do find that in this movie. Because, whether a character turns good or whether a character turns evil, at least we get a chance to maybe show, even sympathize on both ends of the spectrum. Though you may not necessarily condone with their actions or sometimes you might question their motives, but still you get a chance to get to, fully understand the characters. Sometimes both good guys and bad guy characters are very, very highly misunderstood individuals. And even though they might be considered a, a pothole in the depths of society, maybe by getting them to show their development through characters, we could be able to find ways that we can repair these metaphoric potholes that is within the manifestations of our badly misunderstood leading characters, whether it be the hero or the foil. And of course, there might be a few stereotypes and cliches there, including both these characters have the cliched daddy issues, yeah, because apparently in Hollywood, patriarchy is synonymous with evil. Once that is all out of the way, it's where the excitement takes over from there. Yes, okay, people may not like the whole origin story things done, but you know what? You're not true movie fans with me. Hit the road. No, we need an origin story. Otherwise, I can't take sympathy of either the heroes or the bad guys. Billy is now living as an orphan, but he still has a fixation on finding his mother who abandoned him. Though when he finds her, the revolution is actually quite anticlimactic. She states her testimonials, he tries to understand, but then he also realizes that the true family that has loved him was the foster home and has learned to accept his foster siblings and his foster parents more than his own biological parents. If my own biological parents can't love me, I guess I may as well just stick to the people who do love me. And I guess that's where the message comes in this movie. Now, this is not trying to be anti parents. You should always love the people who love you back. But at the same time, if he found who the real people is that loved him, then why go out looking for people who weren't there for him? But it did kind of come across as anticlimactic. I was hoping for something a little more spontaneous. Oh well, you can't win them all. When Billy was called upon by a powerful wizard, played by Djimon Hounsou, he was granted 6 mystical powers that represented the strength of 6 mythological characters, though all he has to say to transform himself from a superhero to back to being a kid, all he has to do is say the name Shazam, and he can transform into a superhero form and back to a teenager again. Now, because he is a superhero, of course, we all need to know what are his superpowers. I mean, he's going to take down evil, and he's going to take down Savannah and all these like 6 deadly sins, which seem to come into the form of demonic-looking gargoyle creatures. We need to know what are his powers. Well, number one, he can fly through the air. He also can charge electrolytes through his hands. All the other typical superhero stuff. So, he pretty much is set. He pretty much has the power. He has the control. And he also can change and change back. All he has to do is say the word Shazam. His transition into the more buff Zachary Levi is reminiscent to when Dr. Bruce Banner can transform into the Incredible Hulk. Or do you remember Power Rangers Turbo? Young Justin when he was the Blue Ranger. I mean, in short form, he's a little kid, a prodigy, sort of almost like very much similar to the Billy character, a genius, a boy genius. But then when he morphs, he he gets a little more adult sized. So this is kind of a very similar thing too that we get from the Billy Batson Shazam alter ego. Under the direction of David F. Sandberg, under the metaphoric superhero origin manual, in which our novice superhero must adjust to his new powers by making each awkward scene all the more entertaining. Because when you first obtain new things, you know what? It's actually quite natural that people feel uncertain when something seems alien to them. Or like when you get a new apparatus for something and you're not fully accustomed to it, it takes a while to adjust. But before you know it, and you're happy and you're more comfortable on your own, you get adjusted to it. It's just like anything that you get. When Billy was trying out his new powers, he experimented on what he could do with them, along with his fellow foster sibling, Freddie Freeman, played by Jack Dylan Grazer. What's funny is he's not using his powers to take down evil people and saving the world from corruption. That comes later. He's more interested in using it to his advantage for his own selfish and mischief making ways, including drinking beer at an underage, um, taking down a bunch of bank robbers. I mean, they tried to shoot him, but the bank robbers tried to shoot him, but he was bulletproof. But he actually managed to use the superhero strength just to take them down, scare them away. Oh, and yeah, he gets to walk away with free complimentary beer as a token for his heroic deeds, which is kind of selfish. But as time goes on, he becomes less and less selfish, and also becomes more acceptable in the loving relationship he has in the foster home, because these were the people who really did care about him. And as we come to the later stages of the film, he also becomes even less selfless, becomes even more selfless by actually uh, having them touch the lizard staff and have become their own Shazams. They've all become superheroes, and they also seem to form into their adult selves. Once Billy adjusts to his newly obtained adult formed alter ego Shazam, it kind of does fall into formulaic territory, as he must take down the evil Dr. Savannah, which they battle across Philadelphia, though actually the movie was shot in Toronto, because small budget or less expensive. It does kind of feel like a poor person's version of Superman versus Zod in Superman 2, though just very watered down, and of course much more saccharine, so that it's more for kids. But in the end, the climax doesn't end with something to look back on. If there was any real weakness to the film, is that, I know I hate it when people say, it's too long. Oh. No. Yeah, okay, fine, yes. But even I gotta admit, this movie should have been maybe an hour and 45 minutes long. It does go on a bit too long. I can understand that they needed room for character development, But if you're doing something kind of more PG leniency, maybe they should have cut back to maybe an hour and 45 at the most. And kids will probably end up getting restless knowing that this movie does go on for more than 2 hours. Not only that, some subplots just don't seem to work out at times. But Sandberg can successfully balance out the superhero action, the comedy, and the dramatic scenes very nicely and well timed without one genre usurping the other. It's a superhero action film, but it's also played for laughs and also might have some more lighthearted affair than the more darker, dreary stuff you get from DC or Marvel comic based movies, maybe with the exception of Deadpool. That one is also taken to a much more lighter fare. The comic book scenes are one we've seen many times before, which might be formulaic, but it's still exciting. We still want to root for our superheroes. The comedy genre is the strongest of the aforementioned ones, as I had laughed quite a lot in this movie due to the perfect timing of Zachary Levi. And this movie doesn't become satirical or parody, but it's just much more lighter fare. And sure, Shazam won't be in the same leagues as Captain Marvel or Avengers Endgame because those are pretty much unstoppable. It still provides 2 hours plus of solid lightweight entertainment for all. And I really, really, truly, highly recommend it to see Shazam. It's great, it's exciting, it's a lot of fun. And I think I pretty much summed up with what I've had to say today. So I guess this ends my writer review. Oh, by the way, if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would give Shazam an 8. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Karad Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.